supporters in general, so it was misconstrued and blah, blah, blah. But really, at this point, Democrats should just give them a taste of their own medicine and own it. Just straight up say, yeah, Trump supporters are garbage. Fuck them. Cry about it, bitch. Like, MAGA is destroying the fucking country. They are a modern-day Nazi movement, and if you voted for an authoritarian fascist running on mass deportation, I'm sorry, I think that garbage or deplorable is actually too fucking polite for these bastards. But again, you can't say that about them. You've got to coddle them. But they can say whatever they want about us and shit on us and call us extremists and terrorists, and we just have to take it. That's good satire. But I do love the talking point that Mike Johnson came up with to poo-poo the idea that Trump wants to be a king, because he's ironically using the shutdown as evidence that Trump couldn't possibly be a king. Listen.
The spectacle is what the mobs, the crowds, the rallies this week were all about. It was quite ironic, though. The irony was very glaring. They called it the No Kings Rally. But the great irony, of course, that we pointed out over and over was if President Trump was a king, the government would be open.
Actually, the real irony is that Donald Trump is benefiting from the shutdown, because once Congress reconvenes, Mike Johnson would then have to swear in Adelita Grijalva, who'd be the 218th vote for Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie's discharge petition that would force a vote on the release of the Epstein files. And Republicans do not want to vote for that because they don't want to show their cards, because they want to protect pedophiles. So Republicans like Mike Johnson, who control Congress, they chose to shut down the government to protect pedophiles, and now they're saying, oh no, it was Democrats who shut down the government, even though they benefit from the government shutdown so they can hide the crimes that Trump may have committed with Jeffrey Epstein. See, that is why the government is shut down, but now he's trying to say, no, it's evidence that Trump couldn't possibly be a king. But I mean, I've got to say, on top of that, the way that they're talking about these protests as if they are Hate America rallies is really rich. Mike Johnson even referred to it as a mob. And it's so embarrassing because these absolutely were not Hate America rallies. Quite the contrary. There were American flags everywhere at the protests that I went to, and a lot of people who were there felt like they had a patriotic duty to get out and protest because they were so outraged at the way that Donald Trump has killed our democracy. I also saw a lot of veterans holding signs. There were signs about the Constitution and banners about unity and how they're not the enemy to Republicans. They all want to come together. And in an article for Common Dreams, Robert Freeman shares some of the signs that he saw at his rally, and they were similar to the ones that I saw. ISIS trumps Gestapo. When cruelty becomes normal, compassion becomes radical. If you love America, this is how you show it. No dictators. I saw this one too. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious line Nazi POTUS. No faux king way we're going to take this. It's bad enough that even introverts are here. The reason you should care is not that it could happen to you, but that it's already happening to others. Hate never made a country great. So many concerns, so little cardboard. If I had a nickel for every time Trump lied, I wouldn't need Social Security. No kings, no felons, no pedophiles. When tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty. No troops in our cities. Only you can prevent fascist liars, so on and so forth. I mean, nothing too overly offensive. I think that the most edgy sign that I saw at the one that I went to was vote for a rapist, expect to get fucked, which was amazing. And it was an older person who was carrying that sign, so it was very cool to see that. You know, there were also a lot of frogs on signs and t-shirts, and it's just hilarious because Republicans are trying to frame what is obviously an overtly liberal, frankly milquetoast protest as some radical event with a bunch of terrorist sympathizers, when it was so tame that a lot of leftists were criticizing it for not being radical enough. And on that note, I do want to talk about that because I don't begrudge lefties and young people for feeling really cynical about the No Kings protest because they weren't making any specific demands. There was also a lot of civility policies being made by the national organizers, not to mention an RSVP list, which is not something that we need in this age when they're tracking the movement of protesters. And also, you know, when you grow up and you're a young person and you see that Occupy Wall Street, Black Lives Matter made no political difference, it's easy to get bogged down and black-pilled about politics. So I do understand why so many people didn't bother, but I will say that No Kings to me really felt like more of an entry point for a lot of people, which is important, right? And if you're a leftist, this is a fantastic way to meet people in your community and introduce them to more radical forms of politics eventually. Befriend them at first, but I mean, this is how you get to know people. You can eventually talk to them about anti-capitalism, anti-imperialism, workplace democracy and such. And I think that people want to have these conversations right now because they're trying to understand why the system failed them so thoroughly. And this is how you can kind of help guide them in the correct direction, right? Don't be like overly preachy and whatnot. Make friends with them. But I mean, these conversations are ones that they actually want to have. And a lot of people there describe themselves as normies. So this is an opportunity for the left to try to radicalize the normies. I think to me, it's an opportunity to channel their anger into more productive, cohesive left-wing forms of politics, because a lot of the folks that I talked to, just from my own firsthand experience, they felt powerless and pissed off. And they protested for the first time because they just felt like they needed an outlet to vent. So I would encourage young people and leftists to show up to the next No Kings protest and talk to the people in their community, because this is how you grow and sustain mass movements. It's always at the grassroots level, never from the top down. In my mind, this was a test for the ultimate goal, which is a general strike. But in order to pull something like that off, you need workers across the political spectrum to come together in mass mobilization like this. It's something that one of the organizers actually talked to Sam Cedar about in the Majority Report. And it's even something that Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson referenced during his speech at the No Kings rally in Chicago.
If my ancestors
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Sandy Shallis, and welcome to Environmental Coffee House, Political Coffee House on this Space TV and Environmental Coffee House. I hope a lot of people join us. I'm going to start with saying hi to everybody, but I'm going to start with a video I made. It's on my channel, no copyrights, nothing like that. I'm going to play it first. I have a lot of material. We're going to talk about Argentina. Everybody's very upset about the bailout, but we've got to go back and learn a bit of history about Argentina. We've got to learn about history, political history, climate history. I mean, just a lot of things so we can understand where we are, why we're doing this. Good thing, bad thing, not good thing. I don't know. But so hi, everybody. Let's watch my video. Nothing to worry about. No copyrights. So here we go.
Don't cry for me, Argentina.
I think it is very important that Argentina succeed and that we give President Milei our full support. And my prediction is that unless President Milei is stopped in some way from taking the actions that he wants to take, that Argentina will have a massive growth in the economy, and there will be far more prosperity and optimism about the future than there has been perhaps in 100 years.
Argentina is fighting for its life, young lady. You don't know anything about it. They're fighting for their life. Nothing's benefiting Argentina. They're fighting for their life. You understand what that means? They have no money. They have no anything. They're fighting so hard to survive. If I can help them survive in a free world, I happen to like the president of Argentina. I think he's trying to do the best he can. But don't make it sound like they're doing great. They are dying. All right? They're dying. What do you mean by that?
We get up one morning and you give Argentina, which is our second biggest competition in the world. They're the largest exporters of soybean meal in the world. So I get up one morning, I turn the news on, and you give $20 billion of taxpayer money to my competition.
The president's commitment is this, that we are moving into an era of rural prosperity, of a golden age for our farmers in rural America. The trade.
And then the Chinese buy I think the figure is 30 or 40 containers, ships, which is about 65,000 metric tons per ship, which is like 2.2 million bushels. So they buy 12 or 14 billion dollars worth of soybeans from the Argentinians.
This Argentina thing is the most fucking corrupt thing that this guy has done yet. His Trump organization has trademarks in Argentina for his businesses. Also, people like BlackRock and PIMCO, they're going to rake in billions of dollars once the bond recovers. Their bonds, Argentina bonds that they hold. This is a fucking con. And he's using our money to do it. Oh, he's not just sending 20 now, he's sending 40 billion. What the fuck are we going to do about this? He's robbing us blind in front of our fucking faces. I've had a goddamn enough of it. I'm not paying another goddamn tax that I can, and I haven't been, and I don't give a fuck who knows. Taxes that I can control and not pay, I'm not fucking paying them. Fuck you. This is ridiculous. This has to stop, and he needs to go to fucking prison. What the fuck are we doing?
Don't cry for me, Argentina.
All right. Well, that was a little primer by me that I thought would get us started, have people join so we can actually start this whole thing and get going. So let me fix my camera. It's a little off. Okay. Well, here we go. I want to say hi to Oliver and Kristen and Johnny and Barry, everybody that's here. But let's do this. Let's do this. I need to discuss with you. Well, maybe let's start with the historical context of Argentina, because we're angry. We don't understand exactly what this whole thing is. We're not giving $40 billion in cash. It's just it's not quite like that. But let's go back a bit, and so I can talk about the historical context. But I have a lot of notes, and I have more interactive stuff to look at. But when I have a lot of notes, sometimes it's hard for me to go through all of this, but I don't, because I don't want to leave anything out. And there's a lot here. It's an amazing country. And you know that Argentina is right above Antarctica. So there's that, it's a big country. It is a big country. All right. Let me get to my beginning of this. All right, here we go. In Argentina gained it was under the Spaniards, and it did gain independence in 1816. It's a very long time ago. And it's been actually kind of tumultuous up and down with stability for the governments. There's been corruption, not unlike a lot of countries, but there have been corruption cases. We're going to talk about those and struggles, power struggles, military leaders, not military leaders. But then, instead of going through all that history, because I could spend hours on all this, we'll go up to Juan Domingo Perón. And obviously, everybody in America knows, don't cry for me, Argentina. They know Evita, they know all that, but it's so much more than that. See, Perón was one of the most pivotal figures in Argentina, and he promoted the labor rights and social welfare programs. He really did shape a very unique political culture. But now the Peronists, as Scott Bessent calls Elizabeth Warren are the more social people, the people that in the United States would be probably like the Democratic Socialists of America, the left wing, so to speak. That's why Besant doesn't like. But then there were military coups and there was a dirty war. They had 1976 was, they called it the Dirty War. And that's when the government really, really suppressed dissent and thousands of disappearances. Sounds like a playbook here, huh? And then they did transition back to democracy in 1983. They did have, a legacy though of authoritarianism, but it did change. But they've had lots of different corruption scandals, and I want to talk to you about the presidents that had these problems. And it is not, Milei is not immune at all. Decades. They've had briberies, they've had embezzlements, they've had nepotism. I mean, public in Argentina has had their trust undermined up and down the block. There was something called the Notebook scandal. That was in 2018. And the business leaders were saying, okay, we revealed they paid bribes to government officials. And it was a big investigation. And then the former president, Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, she faced allegations of corruption, and she actually got convicted of it because she was in the left wing, and it didn't look very good because she funneled a lot of contracts to people she knew, and she was convicted. But she was supposed to go to prison for 6 years, but they did put her on house arrest because somebody tried to shoot her. So the country has, like I said, it's had its issues, and they have their political parties are there's two parties. There's the Peronist Party, which I've talked about, which Scott Bessent again called Elizabeth Warren a Peronist. He's our Treasury Secretary. He's such an idiot. I cannot stand him. He's so stiff. He's so awful. And then there's the Radical Civic Union. And again, I can say the Peronists are social justice, labor rights. I mean, they're who we want to be like, who we like, or they want to emulate our left, whatever has it. But the corruption, not good. Not good. It's not a good look when that happens. And then there was the Libertad Avanza. That's Milei, who is, they call him the madman. He was a little wild guy, and he was an economist. He's an economist. Well, after she left, he won. And because people were really frustrated with all of the mismanagement and the corruption that they perceived. So it gave gains for the opposition party. So he gets in. And the frequent changes in leadership, it has created such an unstable environment, and it complicates economic recovery. And so we're seeing that today. With the, the chainsaw, and how Elon Musk said that they wanted to let Milei do what he needed to do with his country. And now look where we are. And they've had booms and busts and debt and inflation, and many times they've had IMF bailouts, the International Monetary Fund, which just happened. Actually, the International Monetary Fund did a $20 billion bailout. That's on top of what we're going to do. But we're going to go into what it is. And it is. And then we're going to go into climate change in Argentina also, because there's so much on that. So let me get up to my notes part. Oh, I'm very, my notes are always a little crazy to go up and down, because I seem to always run out of time to get everything in order. But all right. So what it is, which has sparked a debate, is the October 2025, the $20 billion a currency swap with Argentina's central bank. And of course, it's a rare move, but Donald Trump likes him and likes the fact that he has those. Milei honestly does have those tendencies to stifle the press, to stifle protest. The country is a lot different than people thought with austerity movement. I mean, really is. And critics of this whole bailout are saying that it's going to benefit wealthy American investors with significant holdings in Argentina, which is what the guy in my video, and I'll put things in the show notes, he was saying, it's wealthy Americans, hedge funds. There's a hedge fund manager named Rob Citron. He was a colleague of Scott Bessent, who is our Treasury Secretary in the United States, and he's got substantial investments in Argentinian assets. So you don't know that if it's called Discovery Capital, and will they gain if the stabilization of the Argentinian economy happens? Of course they will, but we don't know that because Besson says the peso, the Argentinian money, is overvalued, and I think what Milei was saying was undervalued. But if we could lose on this. It's not a sure win. It really isn't. And then the second 20 billion is the involvement of our government, United States government, in getting these loans from major American banks. So like JP Morgan, in America, Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, some of the big ones, right? And it is controversial. It really is. And then there's other people. We don't know. Do we know if Peter Thiel has investments? We don't really know because it's very, very hush, hush. We have Argentina's ambassador to the United States is Alex Oxenford, and he's an entrepreneur. He's a diplomat. He has a lot of business experience, but we don't know what the connections are exactly because we're not going to know. We're not going to know. And it kind of sounds like, in a way, it says, "Oh, are we going to buy Argentina?" Like Trump wanted to have Canada become the 51st state. Well, it sure seems like it, but we really can't. We can't buy it. It's a sovereign nation, but this significant financial support really does make Milei beholden to Trump. Mm-hmm. And he will get the access to the US dollars. So a currency swap, it's that financial agreement between, and I'm going to read this because I had to write it out. It's a financial agreement between two parties to exchange principal and interest payments in different currencies over a specified period. The arrangement allows entities to obtain foreign currency financing at favorable terms or to hedge against currency fluctuations. So typically, these currency swaps involve the exchange of both principal and interest payments, with the notional amounts often being exchanged back in the end of the contract. So in October, we found all this out recently, Scott Bessent finalized that 20 billion currency swap with Argentina's central bank. So let's see what happens. Warren, she's pissed. Senator Elizabeth Warren is not happy. She has expressed strong opposition, and in fact, she's got a bill to try to stop it. That's why he calls her a Peronist, because he's trying to put her down and say that a socially liberal and a labor party is somehow a bad thing. Yeah, that's what they say. That's what this government in the United States does not like, labor unions. Neither do they in Argentina at this time. And she says that during the period, which is happening now, that we're in a shutdown. We're in a shutdown of the government. There's a lot of economic hardship in the United States. Prioritizing financial assistance to this particular foreign nation is misplaced. And she wants transparency. So he says, no, Scott Bessent says, this is mission, can I be like him? It's mission critical for stabilizing Argentina's economy. It's strategic importance. Well, he thinks there's a lot of benefits. And what are the benefits? Well, we could talk about some of them. Some of them. So they also have a guy named Louis Caputo. He's their current minister of economy. So he's kind of like the Scott Bessent. And he has ties. He has a lot of ties to the American financial institutions. 94 and 98, he was the chief of trading for Latin America at JP Morgan. 98 to 2003, he had the same position for Eastern Europe and Latin America at Deutsche Bank. He was the chairman of Deutsche Bank's Argentinian branch until 2008. So he has all kinds of his hands are dirty in all of this, right? He met with Besson in April 2025 in Buenos Aires to discuss the economic reforms and potential trade measures. And, that's mining. And, well, we've seen the outrage with the farmers, the outrage over the soybeans and the beef, right? But this Caputo, he's another shady figure in all this. And that's, that it's not cool. It's really not so cool. And she's right to call for this, to call for accountability. It's the ESF, it's called. It's where's it's the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which we have in the United States. It's a reserve fund. It's established to support US dollar and manage international financial crises. Yeah. But whose fault is the financial crisis? I thought that Argentina was going to be okay with taking a chainsaw to all their social problems. But people in Argentina are suffering, except, of course, for the wealthy people, just like in the United States. Exactly like that. Now, if the currency swap fails, and it could, if the peso depreciates significantly, the U.S. could face losses when converting pesos back to dollars. And the ESF is limited. It has limited liquid assets, which is like approximately 23 billion out of 221 billion. It could be strained, potentially affecting its ability to support other interventions. And then the U.S. taxpayer. The ESF is funded by us, by the U.S. taxpayer. A failed intervention could lead to a reduction in the fund's value, and it can indirectly affect public finances, our money, right? Our money. Market confidence, and then a failed intervention could signal to global markets that the U.S. is unable to stabilize foreign currencies, and it could lead to increased volatility and reduced investor, because that's who's important here. Heck with the taxpayer, it's the investors. So we'll see what happens if she, being the Peronist she is, she, adheres to the principles and policies associated with Juan Perón. That's what a Peronist is. Again, I'll go over it. He was that person. It was justicalism. It's a political ideology and movement that emerged in the mid 20th century. And it was social justice and economic independence and political sovereignty, which is not happening, right? The Peronism advocated for redistribution of wealth and the protection of workers' rights, aiming to reduce social and economic inequalities. And they wanted economic independence, which was a movement emphasized developing a self-sufficient national economy, reducing reliance on foreign powers by promoting domestic industries and controlling natural resources and political sovereignty. Peronism seeks to maintain Argentina's autonomy in international affairs. That's what they want, or that's what they wanted. Now, call it, like I said before, left-wing populism, variant of nationalist socialism. It combines elements of nationalism. It's very interesting doing this research since I made that video last week. And I knew I wanted to do this because I don't want people to run around just thinking that, oh, we're giving $40 billion again. It's not like that. Everything is always so much more complicated. But let me get down to my notes on who was in the if you give me a second. I am very sorry because maybe I'll go back in time a little bit. Why don't we just go back a little bit in time, because we know who Juan Perón it was. And we knew that Eva Perón was his wife. That's why she's so famous. That's what Argentina's on the map for Evita. I mean, to most Americans who don't know much about anything, at least in MAGA, they've probably seen Madonna in Evita. But she married him, and she was the first lady who founded the Eva Perón Foundation, Assistance to the Poor. She built hospitals, schools, homes for the elderly, and supported labor rights. She was quite a credible person. She secured women's suffrage in Argentina. She was important in leading the passage of the women's right to vote in 47, and in 51 she ran for vice president, though, but she withdrew because she had some health issues, and it was sad because she had cervical cancer, and she passed away so young in 1952 at 33. But, she left a symbol of compassion and social justice, which is so lacking in the United States in this government. Really. And then there was the president, which I'm looking for my notes again for. Oh, okay. So before Milei, it was Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner. She was the president, and she was the 56th president in Argentina from 2007 to 15. And if she had not done, she was convicted of it. She really put a black eye on the Peronists. She put a black eye because of corruption. It's just too easy for people to funnel business. That's what she did. She funneled business. It's sad, she began her political in the 1980s. She moved up the ranks, and she was the first lady to Nestor Kirchner. He was the first president, but then she was elected as in 2007 as Argentina's first female, right, president. And then she got it back in 2011. And then she was vice president in 2019. But in 2022, unfortunately, that pull of money, that pull of greed, she was convicted of corruption. She steered public works contracts to a close friend. And it's not allegedly if she was convicted. And she was sentenced to 6 years, and she can never hold public office again. Although, she's kind of trying. There was in our country in March said, okay, well, we have a travel ban. You're not allowed here. So she can't, because now this is rich. This administration imposed a travel ban on her because of corruption. I mean, tell me that isn't ironic, right? But a lot of things led to a few good things in Argentina. And that was, even though her contracts were bad, they were, fraudulent. They were bad. It was not good. But there is a guy there was an election in Buenos Aires, and I'm looking for his name, who was elected from the Peronists as the mayor, I guess, the governor. And I'm going to find this. I want to find it, his name. Forgive me for everything being mixed up and upside down. Well, anyway, things may change because of Milei taking the chainsaw to the government. Austerity it doesn't work. Argentinians don't like it. Who does? And that's what's happening in the United States. It's like a mirror country in a way. Not all of the history, but what's happening. Now, in 2002, Argentina really had a most serious economic crisis in history. They had a huge recession, and they had terrible unemployment, and they had terrible social unrest. And it was a lot of unsustainable fiscal policies they had. And a lot of it was it's called, well, all right, I'll just simplify it. It was a rigid currency peg to the US dollar and escalating external debt. So 98, 2002, and of course they blame it on the Peronis, but Argentina's economy contracted. It contracted by about 28%. Unemployment rates soared. It actually reached 25%, and poverty levels were just insane. And like half of the population was living below the poverty line. Not acceptable in a country that is rich in agriculture and natural beauty. Natural beauty. And so again, they had defaulted, which happened. It was kind of like right before this, they defaulted on 93 billion of external debt. So it was one of the largest sovereign defaults in history at that time. So who knows if history will repeat itself with this swap of our money, the money in our country. But a lot of social unrest. I mean, massive protests in their country, violent clashes, demonstrators, and security. There were some fatalities, and that president before her was Fernando de la Rua. Okay, so then that then led to the ability for Cristina Fernandez de la Kirchner to get elected. So you see, there's a history of tumultuous up and down, but now they have this idiot, and it's so sad. It really is. It's just upset. It upsets everybody because he got elected because the people were so disgusted, and he promised that he would change everything, and he didn't. He made it worse. He did bring in a little bit of help. But, even there, they had this thing called the convertibility plan, and that was 91 to 2002. And that again was the peso. That was the peso to the US dollar at a 1-to-1. They wanted to eliminate their hyperinflation, which they've had, and stimulate economic growth because, growth is everything on this planet. Economic growth. The hell with everything else like the climate and the environment, hell with that. But they did get, and believe it or not, they had an inflation rate of 3,000% in 1989. So it went to 3.4% in 1994. So they did have some spurred economic growth. But again, unemployment, income inequality, and lots of problems. And it was an overvalued peso. We have to watch what happens on this one. It's going to be very interesting. It is. It's going to be very interesting. So takes us to, October this year, right now. The economists say the peso is generally considered overvalued, about 20% overvalued. And I'll read your comment in a second as we go towards the end, Nadia, because it looks like you have some very worthwhile information. So that'll be cool. What are the implications of the overvaluation, which could be export competitiveness? So an overvalued peso can make Argentinian exports more expensive on the market. And then also it could hinder economic growth. But they had a currency devaluation in April 24, which they had announced a sharp devaluation of its currency, and they increasing the exchange rate from 400 to 800 pesos per US dollar as part of a measure to address economic challenges. And that's again where I told you the IMF stepped in originally. So it's a big money thing. It's it seems to me like a lot of it is, you look at the history of a country that really should be not as tumultuous as it is. And had Kirchner not been a criminal, had she not been corrupt, it could have been so different. It could have been different. But now they're doing a currency swap, and the IMF provided, it's like a comprehensive long-term support, but they wanted to structure it on these reforms that would be made in the country, and the US Treasury says, okay, we're going to address these immediate liquidity needs and market stabilization. So we're going to see what happens. We definitely will see what happens. Now with it was funny because Javier Milei's sister now has some problems. Her name is Karina Milei. And she, again, now she's got problems. She's definitely got problems. She has allegations of corruption that are definitely, how could he not know? He campaigns on anti-corruption and fiscal responsibility, and his sister is running around being corrupt. She what was it? It's a bribery scandal, and it had to do with Argentina's national disability agency. Believe it or not, it's crucial. It's so crucial to understanding it. Like, people are very upset in Argentina at this. So it really could hurt him, and I hope it does. Public outrage. The scandal sparked widespread public indignation, and especially through these young disability advocacy groups, because it involves funds intended for vulnerable populations. Well, how do you feel about that? Because what's happening in the United States? They're cutting everything for vulnerable populations in the United States, and they don't care. So, it also had problems. It shows you that there's leaks and scrutiny, and particularly with the pharmaceutical industry in Argentina. And so it's happening there too. And we're still doing this currency swap. We're still going to do it. He doesn't care. I don't think that Donald Trump or Besant care about the corruption. They don't care. But you know what he did say? And there's that election coming up, and it's not a presidential election, but it's an election nonetheless. And if the Peronistas, if the Peron party wins, Donald Trump says, oh, well, screw you, because he wants control. He wants that right-wing party to be in control. And they don't care. They don't care. The Trump administration totally has relaxed certain anti-corruption measures. So they suspended prosecutions under the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, prioritizing economic competitiveness over strict anti-corruption enforcement. Duh, right? So this administration is not actively engaged in addressing corruption. They really don't give a shit. Okay, quite frankly, it's all about the money. It really is. It's all about the money. And another thing with Javier, he's another one that he just wants to stifle. He wants to stifle protest. He wants to stifle people. He wants to be like Donald Trump. It's MAGA, make Argentina great again, which isn't working. The chainsaw broke. That's a gas chainsaw anyway, so it basically sucks. Now, the guy that won in Buenos Aires, the current governor, is Alex Kichilov. So it'll be interesting to watch what happens with him. So, in the interest of time, let me move on because I want to move on to climate also. And I wanted you to understand that it's not just running around saying, okay, we're giving, $40 billion. There's so much history, so much history. Now, people will move on to the climate crisis. And I want to, I have a couple of things to talk about because one of the big things with the issues, you know, of course, he took Milei as he's a denier. And he's another one that pulls them out. He calls the climate crisis a leftist lie. They left the climate summit, not involved with the Council of the Parties, the cops. But yet things that are going on in that country.
2 points. The first thing is that this is not about money. There is enough money to bail out Argentina with
I was
$20
supposed
billion.
to play this
There
earlier.
is enough money to purchase a brand new aircraft for $173 million for the Homeland Security Secretary. There is enough money to renovate.
I'm sorry, I was supposed to play this earlier, but here we go.
The White House ballroom. What there's not enough money for under this Republican government is you. There's not enough money for you. And it is astonishing to me that the party in charge of the government literally won't show up to work during the second longest shutdown in American history. House Republicans have been gone for more than a month. More than a month. They've worked 2 weeks out of the last 3 months. Nice work if you can get it.
Okay. So that was just Representative Schatz talking about what's going on, but I wanted to play that a little earlier. What I wanted to show you was what's going on, things like this that's going on in the United States, but this happened this year. I mean, they are suffering. And as you know, I do have, let me show you the country. It's just a quick, so you get that idea in your mind of Argentina. We see, oh, and there was also the Falklands War, but we won't talk about that. But I mean, it's been problem after problem, like usual, like everywhere, right? But you see, it goes down to Antarctica, and there's glaciers, and they're melting, thawing, melting, dripping, you name it. But that's Argentina. And another thing that's happening, flooding. They're having floods, fires. I mean, it's just it's quite a mess. It is a mess. But yet, it's a leftist lie. That's what he says. It's a leftist lie. Okay, leftist lie. So there was an article, and I'm not going to pull up the article because right now I actually don't know how to show an article on the desktop yet on this. I haven't used it. So it was in the Guardian, which has, as having fantastic stuff. It was Making Argentina Great Again. And this was from 2024. So it's a little dated, but they had problems. Javier Milei's push for extraction and cuts to land protections have left people fearing for their way of life, and environmentalists are concerned about the future. Which we know let me get down to what they're actually auctioning public lands. They want to do everything the United States is doing. It's kind of like this idiot Milei wants to be Junior Trump. He wants to be another junior. He's crazy. He is a nut, They literally called him madman. And they want to mine, and they want to 34 new copper exploration projects and the creation of the Malargüe Western Mining District. So it's just more of the same. Business as usual. Let's destroy everything. Just like the Trump administration. These federal lands are in the Andes region, which is, there's just not enough time for me to do the comprehensive kind of presentation that would show you videos of the beauty and the majesty of this country, which is, but it's affecting them. It is definitely affecting them. And this guy, there's another guy, named Cornejo. He's an ally of the Argentinian president Milei, and he says again, he says it's a socialist lie, and he believes that the environment should be at the service of the economy in the country where more than half the population lives in poverty. But there have been polls in Argentina where people have said it's a big concern for them. It is definitely a concern. They understand it because they see it, and the farmers see it, and they know what's going on there. They definitely see it. I'm looking for my notes on the specifics on that, because it was very interesting that, one hand says, oh no, because we have a country full of poverty, we just should destroy the environment to do that, to fix this. But that's not how you fix it, really. Nobody's come up with the magic word to do it. And it's pretty sad. So I'm looking for that in my notes. It's like Argentina first, American first, but it's just, well, anyway, I can't find the specific, but it was a percentage that was pretty high in the poll of people in Argentina, because they're on the ground. They know what's happening, but yet Milei I think he won by 10 points because of their pain. I don't know what they thought, though. He's radically shrunk the size of the state. He downgraded the environmental ministry to an undersecretariat, which budgets for the budgets for environmental protection have been reduced, like here, like gutting the EPA, and they're gutting it. He had an omnibus reform law, which was huge, 664 articles aimed at redrawing legislatures, which would tear up these things to protect the glaciers and forests, because there's a lot of deforestation going on in Argentina, unfortunately. And they've got this thing called Incentive Regime for Large Investments. So it's RIGI for short, which it's a policy that will be designed to exploit the country's extensive national resources. And it's really sad that this is happening in their country and in our country. They have the second largest source of shale gas in the Patagonia field, known as Vaca Muerta, meaning dead cow, and a fifth of the planet's lithium. Of course, oil exploration is also taking place off the coast. So here we are, just saying, okay, all of the economic problems and an environment that is going to be decimated even more. And what they're doing is, this RIGI. It's an attempt to speed up investment in natural resources, in line with Milei's vision of economic development. And it has a terrible impact. And environmentalists in Argentina, they're fearing that these policies, which this was at the end of 2024, I'm reading from, actually are already happening. Tax incentives to major investors in those sectors, the oil, mining, and gas. So this person, Manuel Jaramillo, He's the general director at the Argentinian Wildlife Foundation, says the attempt to abolish environmental laws showed the direction of Malay's political project. They don't care. They want to just take everything. They're going to take everything. Yep. And this RIGI, R-I-G-I, makes it open for investment. And the United States, of course, is swooping in on what's called the lithium triangle. And they're really reducing all of the regulations, which is just so sad. It is. It's really sad. They had a federal system with much power resting with its provinces. And Milei, he was kind of twisting the arm of these governors to pledge allegiance to his goals, and was something called the May Pact, which committed provinces to the exploitation of the country's natural resources. It's worsened considerably since Milei's election. Every day in the United States, every day in Argentina is more environmental destruction. Every day. Going in the wrong directions. Even with the lithium. What do they want the lithium for? Data centers? Now, one thing I didn't look up to see if there were data centers yet all over Argentina, like they're popping up here. Totally. Now, one of the things that I was using was the Buenos Aires Times. I can't show it to you, but there's a lot of articles. If you want to know more about Argentina, the Buenos Aires Times is quite full of good information. I'll put a link on the Environmental Coffee House page. I will definitely put a link in so you can see. Gee, I can't believe only total 44 people are watching this. Where is everybody? Maybe 5 o'clock is not the best time. I don't know. I really don't know. But it is, yeah. Grant says, yes, it is ridiculous and frustrating. And I need to figure out how to go back to Nadia. All right. Nadia has... Kirchner's takedown was from CIA Operação Lava Jato. It's fake charges against Lula in Brazil metastasized to taking down the pink tide. Ooh. Well, see, I didn't get enough of that. So you're saying that the charges were not right, were fake, or she was convicted wrongly? Well, look more into that. I did not have a lot of time to do every single thing. And Nadia, thank you again. She's having the trouble finding the Argentinian Museum for Trans Victims of the Military Dictatorships channel. Oh no, another channel that YouTube might have zapped. I don't know, but thank you. And thank you, Ian, for being here. Also, I just saw you in the audience, but do you see how everything is everything? Yeah. Turning the world into Easter Island is not a good plan. No, it's not. But you see how everything is connected, the economics, the corruption, of this new credit swap with Argentina. It's really like we're living in a casino in Trump's mind. It's like one big casino. And one loss, and we're hurt. We're hurt. While the glaciers are melting and they're destroying everything, they have a president with a chainsaw that implemented austerity measures hurting the people. So on one end, they're saying, okay, we're going to implement austerity. We are going to fire. We're going to lay off, just like the United States is doing. They want to do Argentina first, like America first, which is really what they're doing, and hurt the American farmers. Now, in 2019, when Trump was president, now this is interesting. Trump was all gung ho on tariffs. I think it was tariffs for Argentinian farmers, and now it's like he doesn't even give a shit about American anymore. So it's Argentinian beef, it's Argentinian soybeans that are being sold around the world because of the desire. It's all greed. It's all greed. It's all money. It's all money. And you feel like Donald Trump doesn't even care about American farmers. And I know I'm segueing back a little back and forth because we know that the climate crisis is hitting Argentina. We know that the glaciers are melting. We know that this guy is terrible, this Milei. We know he's a freak, actually. You saw in my video. If you didn't see it, you can watch it on my Environmental Coffee House. And thank you for joining, Teres. Thank you so much. But it just seems like Donald Trump doesn't care anymore. He really doesn't. I don't think he does. I think he feels like, well, he got their vote and maybe he plans on staying. I mean, he is building the Jeffrey Epstein Memorial Ballroom, also known as the Golden Showers Ballroom or the Vladimir Putin Commemorative Ballroom. Hey, many, many names you could call it. But it seems to me like he is not concerned and that Brooke Rollins is lying about American farmers. But we shall see. We shall see. The tide is turning. But will it turn in time? Will it turn in time? Then, I did have some other notes on some tariff things with Argentina. Let me see. Okay, here it was. This was the specific that was 2019, and he reinstated tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from Argentina, which was concerning for the devaluation. And then the administration argued that the devaluation of Argentina's currency was detrimental to American farmers, right? And industries. But now it's a policy shift. And it's all different, I believe, because the administration in Argentina was different then, and now it is, another ass kisser of Milei, right? And so he did a 90-day truce on tariffs for all countries except China. It was just more, Argentina. Well, it's like let's just buy your beef and screw the American farmer, even though we should not be having beef really at all. I mean, at least not factory farms, which are absolutely horrible for the environment, and they're more morally and ethically, well, kind of sad. So let's look at a few of your comments. And I want to I really appreciate you all for coming, because I just think it's so important not to just, from the gut, our gut emotions are, fuck that, $40 billion to Argentina, but not understanding some of the history. Maybe I was a little all over the place, but I think you get the drift. Argentina now has a crazy president. Make Argentina great again. Austerity measures, hurting the population, backlash in Buenos Aires with a Peronist new governor of that area. Okay, so maybe the tide is turning, but then Donald Trump makes the money and the swap conditional on the election. Are they? Who knows? I don't think Argentina is doing any kind of tampering. I couldn't find much evidence that they're doing tampering on the election. But if you don't think Milei knows that this is serious business, but now his sister is involved in corruption. So which of course the Trump administration doesn't care about, to circle back on what I had mentioned, because they don't care, because they're corrupt as hell. mean, they're doing the White House. They're demolishing the White House, which is kind of like the metaphor, the metaphor for collapse, only they're going to rebuild it as a stark, barren, ugly place. And they never went through any historical committees. They didn't go through Congress. They do what they want. They just do what they want. Who's there to stop them? You think so, Karen? She says, I bet Palantir is testing new surveillance there. It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. I could have spent another week and a half to 2 weeks researching much more in depth than I already did, and finding the time to put my notes together better. But I think I made my points that this is happening, and both countries are corrupt, and both countries have insane psychopathic leaders. And it doesn't matter that they have healthcare and we don't, like that, because actually there's 3 tiers of healthcare in Argentina, but for the most part they do have it's not Medicare for all kind of thing, but they do have a better healthcare system. But of course, if you have more money, you can buy private healthcare, and then you're not having to wait. Some of the criticisms were waits and lines and things, and the university system. I mean, they have some good things going for them. Maybe not for long with the conditions we're putting on them, because everything here is for profit. And if he is seriously as up Donald Trump's rear end as it looks, who knows what they might change. All right. Well, we've got no time left. And so I want to thank you, because I really enjoyed this. I hope that you learned something. I hope you got something out of talking about Argentina, more than just, being angry, and understanding that there's a lot of dirty tricks being pulled, and that it could really end up hurting us. And Elizabeth Warren's on the case. We should follow up. So goodbye. Thank you, everyone. I love you. And I am going to do a special show tomorrow night, Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. I will be on Environmental Coffee House tomorrow night. I love you.